I'm WG and this is a CZN character showcase. 7 days is all that's left, or depending on the launch time, 6 days and a certain amount of hours. Today's topic, RIN, the solo carry, and that has all to do with her kit. Though before we get into that, let's check out the combat motion.
刀ではなくお花さんになりたいと思ったことがあります。永遠に変わらぬあなたの刀になります。この身を刀にして波紋のごとく立ち上がる霧、ほころびる恋心、沈み込む黒い霧、すべてが散った後は霧の時間です。ありのままの私を愛して。
So, what you want to know obviously is, are there any like visual changes, anything crazy that we've noticed from the limited playtest? The only thing you'll find is that the Dark Mist Secret Art Slash went down from a 6 cost to a 5 cost ultimate or ego skill, if you want to call it that, and that's the only observable change for now. Alright, now after this showing who the hell is RIN and what can she do. RIN is a 5-star striker, meaning your DPS slash frontline units. In comparison to Vanguards, they don't really have a lot of defensive tools, but they have a very potent offensive capability. And then she's off the void element, allowing her to deal extra damage to targets weak to void, as well as to their tenacity bar, bringing us to what RIN is all about, and those are her skills. Though we have the 2 standard basic attacks in a 100% damage and then in a 2 cost 220% damage basic attack, as well as a shield skill, usual for DPSs. And then we have the drawing slash. So you see the haste tag, meaning that the action she takes does not reduce the action count of an enemy, which is perfectly fine. But then there is this Dark Cloud stance. This is something that hasn't been explained on the cards, and it is integral to understand on why she would even be called a solo carry, or how she works in a in the first place, and that is right here. So you get this beautiful indicator at the top, and this is the Dark Cloud stance. So if you obtain the Dark Cloud stance, you enter into her basically like a sheathing state, right? And this state keeps on so long as nobody outside of RIN plays an attack card. The moment somebody that's not RIN plays an attack card, she leaves the Dark Cloud stance. Now, is that Dark Cloud stance even worth it? Oh, absolutely it is. So, you deal 120% damage and then you obtain the Dark Cloud stance. And then if you are already in the Dark Cloud stance, you would increase the damage by an additional 50%, so bring it up to 170% at a 0 cost. Here you can again also obtain the Dark Cloud stance, as well as get 2 of RIN's cards out of your draw pile, so allowing you to get even more skills. Then we have the Dark Cloud Art Annihilation with 180% damage, once again not reducing enemy action count, and the damage count increases by 1 should you be in the Dark Cloud stance, so it's gonna be 180% times 2, so 360% at a 1 AP cost. Then the Force Art, for 1 turn retain the Dark Cloud stance, Dark Cloud Blade Art for 1 turn plus 30% your attack card damage. So what that means is, if you are in the Dark Cloud stance and you activate the Dark Cloud Force Art, you're going to deal 30% more damage with attack cards, as well as also you cannot lose the Dark Cloud stance during the turn you've used Dark Cloud Force Art, meaning if you use this golden card, you can play the attack cards of other units without like getting dropped out of the Dark Cloud stance. And then you have the Dark Cloud Arcane Art Black Mist, and what it does is it deals 160% damage, and then if you are in the stance, which you should be, you increase the damage count by 1 according to the numbers of skill cards in hand. So it's gonna be 160% damage. If you have 1 skill card in hand, it's gonna be 320% damage, then 480, then 640%, then 800%, and then the maximum should be 5 times 100, 800. Yeah, the maximum damage is 960% at a 1 AP cost should you have 5 skill cards in hand the moment you use this skill. So that is why, like, if you look at the effects like this, like for example, damage 180%, nothing else if you're not in Dark Cloud stance. Damage 120, nothing else. Here, you get for 1 turn, you sustain your stance, nice, but you don't even get the other buff. This one, 160% damage, nothing else. It is integral that you do not use someone else's attack card unless you're like willing to build up the Dark Cloud stance again or the like. So for example, it could be of advantage to get rid of teammates' attack cards or collaborate with units that have very few attack cards themselves, or even if you are in a situation to just not play them out until you've dealt the damage you wanted to deal. So that brings us to the ultimate. The ultimate, the Black Cloud secret technique slash, you can see that it shows 6 bars because that's from the limited playtest, but it's now only 5 bars. So yeah, it deals a 400% damage and then applies 2 stacks of vulnerable. Vulnerable is a debuff that for 1 instance of getting hit increases the damage of that hit instance by 50% and then gets removed after the hit gets taken. So here we are on the drawing slash, straight up, same cost, same everything, just 180% damage, the rest stays the same. Here you have 150, and then also if you are in a Dark Cloud art, you increase the damage count by 1, going up to 300%, should you already be in the stance. Then here it's just a straight up 350% damage, but this skill cannot be used if you're not in a Dark Cloud stance, and it also doesn't give you the Dark Cloud stance, meaning you have to get it from that RIN, draw a RIN cards card, for example, or you get the Dark Cloud stance elsewhere. Fourth one, you have the standard effect, and then damage increases by 30% according to the number of cards in hand. So this card is then going to be a 0 cost, going up to a maximum of plus 300%, so 420% damage should you have 10 cards in hand when you play this, or I guess you could say 9 because you have to play this card, so it's then gonna count the 9 in your hand. And then lastly, you increase the cost by 1, you increase the damage, and you can replicate 1 random RIN's attack card in the hand except this card. So any of RIN's attack cards that are in your hand during you playing this one is just going to get copied. So you're going to get a second copy of it on your hand to then be played out twice for the turn. And also the important part here is it doesn't say apply exhaust to the duplicated card, meaning that if you duplicate a card, it will stay in your normal fight rotation for the whole duration of the fight, which is pretty damn sweet. Then we have the Dark Cloud Annihilation, which just here gives you an extra shield and then allows you to draw 3 of your cards. Important, not of RIN cards, of your cards. So you're just going to draw 3 cards from your combatants. Then here you have the unique tag, meaning you won't be able to clone it, usually hinting towards a very strong variant. And that is you're going to be able to draw 2 RIN cards, and then when the Dark Cloud Blade Art is active, you can play this card for free. You could play this card at 0 cost and still draw 2 cards. And then in the middle you reduce, or you reduce the amount of draws to 1, but it is for attack cards. And then Dark Cloud Blade Art, damage increased by 50% until use. So that should mean that the card you draw should be increased by 50% until you use the card that you just drew. So it's just a 50% damage increase to the attack card you draw. Then we have here move Dark Cloud Arcane Art Miel and Dark Cloud Arcane Art Hyukmu from draw pile or graveyard to the hand. And these ones are, as far as I can tell, the the Black Mist and the Annihilation. So it should be Dark Cloud Arcane Art Black Mist and Dark Cloud Arcane Art Annihilation. Should you possess those are then going to be moved to your hand. And then we have the last one at a upgrade card. So you play it once, it stays active as a passive effect. At the beginning of the turn, if you are in Dark Cloud stance, you draw an additional RIN card. So there's a lot of synergy going on here, and we aren't even halfway finished. bringing us to this with a just damage increase to 270%, the cost changed to 0 and plus 50% damage, so 230 total should you be in a Dark Cloud stance. Then in the middle you have a double hitter at 300%, and then should you be in the Dark Cloud stance, you deal 30%, you get an extra 30% crit rate on top of your already existing crit rate, and then should you crit, that crit damage is also going to be increased by 100%, leaving huge potential, especially once we get like later in the game with more gear, more ways to get crit rate, thought out builds and the like. And then for the fourth one, 240% damage, and then an additional 100 should you be in Dark Cloud stance. And then the fifth one is you just deal 180% damage, but you reduce the cost of every RIN card in hand by 1, which can be incredibly powerful, because it's then just going to allow you to, especially if you can cycle, to play this card out, then play the card that searches for a RIN card, play that one at 0 cost, to search for 2 RIN cards that are also 1 cost that then turn into 0 cost, and you can pretty much play all of those for free. And because all of them have haste, that means the enemy never moves until it's their turn, and you're never going to leave the stance because you're always using these these attacks from RIN. And then we have the Dark Cloud Force Art upgrades, in that you deal 60% damage with attack cards. Then here you just reduce the cost, but you lose the effect of the attack damage increase. For the other one, you create the Dark Cloud Secret Art Annihilation card and apply Ethereal to that card. Ethereal meaning you'll only be able to play this card this turn. If you don't play it, it disappears for the whole fight. So it's either you play it or it's just gonna be gone. But the card that it does create, if you think about it, it is the this card right here, this blue one, Dark Cloud Arcane Art Annihilation, which that's the card that's getting created right there. And then the upgrade card is at the beginning of a turn, obtain Dark Cloud stance, meaning you can end your turn on the attack cards of somebody else, because the moment you start your next turn, you're gonna go into Dark Cloud stance again anyway. And then if in Dark Cloud stance, RIN's attack card damage increases by 50%, which is just really, really sweet, especially if you're only using her for your damage. Having this upgrade card out there, just naturally increasing RIN's attack card damage by 50% is pretty damn huge. Bringing us to the upgrades, and that is for the basic attack cards. Obtain Dark Cloud stance to Cloud Sword first form and third form, meaning to the attack card at 1 cost and the attack card at 2 cost are now also going to provide the Dark Cloud stance. So the more ways you have to obtain the Dark Cloud stance, the more flexible you can be with using attack cards of somebody else. This one is the very first awakening, in that you get a second RIN. Once you get a second RIN, the damage is 190%, and then Dark Blade Art increases the damage count by 1 according to the number of skill cards in hand. So you go from you go up to a 190% base, whereas the normal damage is 160%. So then instead of it being 960%, it's going to be 1110%, I believe, an additional 150% due to you getting up to, just because the multiplier, right, the base multiplier is 30% higher. I made that more complicated than it needed to be. Alright, so now that we have that out of the way, this brings us to your second RIN copy after you already obtain her, so the third one. If RIN obtains the Dark Cloud stance, you create a Sheath Sword card. This effect can only be triggered once every turn. Sheath Sword is this card right here. It is exhaust and ethereal, meaning that if you play it, it gets taken into the banished pile, so it's out of the fight forever. Or you don't play it and it still gets taken out of the fight forever, obviously, until you create another one. So what this does is you deal 100% damage and then plus 20% damage according to the number of RIN's attack cards used this turn. If no other RIN attack card is in the hand, reduce the cost by 1. So the way that works is you enter the Dark Cloud stance, create the Sheath Sword, play out all your other RIN cards, and then at the end of your turn, you sheath your sword, deal damage based on how many cards you've played, and you also will be able to play this at 0 cost should you play rotation really well. And honestly, that is just a pretty fucking awesome mechanic. Bringing us to the ult upgrade, in that it now deals 450% damage and 3 instances of vulnerable, still at the projected 5 cost, which is going to be your A3. Then we have the A4. If RIN is not in the Dark Cloud stance when using any of her cards, any card, she obtains the Dark Cloud stance. So there's like a lot of flexibility of playing around with the Dark Cloud stance should you need it, but it's not a necessarily big damage increase if you already use her properly. This is after getting her for the 5th time. Getting her for the 6th time increases the damage of all her cards by straight up 6%. And then the final one, having 7 RINs, gives you the ability to, at the beginning of the battle, obtain the Dark Cloud stance. And then at the beginning of a turn, if you are in Dark Cloud stance, you obtain 2 morale. 2 morale translates to a 40% increase to any multipliers. So for example, one of her more crazy multipliers would be, let's assume you have her at A7, alright? Let's assume you have her at A7 for whatever reason. And then you have the Dark Cloud Arcane Art Black Mist. Dark Cloud Arcane Art Black Mist in its upgraded form, because it's obviously from the A1. So you would take the 190% multiplier, add the 40% from the morale on top, making this a 230% multiplier, and then this 230% multiplier can trigger an additional 5 times extra on top, depending on how many skill cards you have in hand. So the max damage of this would be a potential, so 230% times 5 would be the additional damage, so 1000, and then 150 for the 30, so 1150, then plus the additional 230 of the base damage, that would be 1380% damage with a single card. And that could also be cost reduced with the cost card. So I hope you understand why I called her a solo carry. And so long as you let her carry you, she will carry you. So for example, you could combine her with a support like Cassius, who can search for her cards. You could, or even just draw more cards. You could combine her with some units that just don't necessarily have a lot of attack cards. You can combine her with, for example, someone like a Mika just for the AP generation, but she really has all the potential in the world that you could need to just play card after card after card, put in hit after hit after hit, and see these damage numbers just skyrocket. So I hope you enjoyed this RIN showcase. Keep in mind, 1 week it's all that's left. And getting closer to release, I'll have a surprise for all of you, and that's going to be the very best resource you're going to find in CZN.